Hello and welcome to Countdown to Power with me, Graeme Pryce. Liverpool is my favourite city, which will probably come as a surprise to absolutely nobody. It's a city that's contributed so much, from the Industrial Revolution to the swinging 60s when the sounds of Liverpool could be heard all over the world. It's a city that stood up to Thatcher and then limped through the 90s, only to rise up again and be named European Capital of Culture in 2008. It's one of the only cities in the world that doesn't seem to be permanently in a rush. That being said, it has also given us John Bishop, Jimmy Tarbuck, and as we learned last week, Therese Coffey. So it's certainly not all good. And there's one particular spawn of the pool that certainly didn't take the friendly spirit of the city with her when she got on her last train out of Lime Street. The Right Honourable Esther McVey, MP for Tatton, is, in my opinion, one of the city of Liverpool's most prominent symbols of failure. She was MP for Wirral West between 2010 and 2015 before being inexplicably given George Osborne's safe seat of Tatton in 2017. So she's been around for quite a while. And of all these videos I've made, she's been one of the most difficult subjects to narrow it down to 5 points with. I've just about managed it though, so here's a few reasons I think Esther McVey is an utterly awful Tory twat, right after this. Just a quick interjection, I won't keep you long. YouTube's algorithms run off 4 things: whether you've liked, commented and subscribed, and how long you watched the video for. If you could do one of the first 3, and maybe just watch the video a bit longer than you might have otherwise, it would be hugely appreciated and it helps the channel loads. Thank you. Esther seemed to have been enthralled by the Dark Lords of Poverty, Ian Duncan Smith, quite early on, and it seems by 2013 she'd been fully trained in his dark art of utterly merciless lack of pity. It seems she may have taken some extra classes in sheer fucking po-faced arrogance too, as in 2013 she said she thought it was right and positive that people were visiting food banks, and then said, "In the UK it is right, you know, that more people are visiting, which you'd expect, going to food banks, as times are tough because we're all having to pay back the 1.5 trillion debt which spiralled under Labour." The national debt, after 14 years of the government she represents, is now over 2.5 trillion. She wasn't finished there though. She's also tried to just blatantly lie the problem away, once saying, "The rise in food banks predates most of the welfare reforms this government put in place." I can't work out if she's forgetting that people keep records of things she does and says, or if she thinks we all got off the boat yesterday, but that's clearly utter bullshit. There were less than 300 food banks in the UK in 2010, and there are now over 2,000. What does she think's caused that? She hasn't mellowed with age either. In 2010, she said, "When I was growing up, my parents put money into food, utility bills and the mortgage. Now, people feel that to be connected, they have to have an iPad and a phone that will help them with education and jobs." Esther McVey knows full well that the welfare reforms she worked so hard to impose make it literally impossible to use the universal credit system without access to the internet and a phone number. So she's just being a bitch for the sake of it there, isn't she? Universal credit was a system dreamed up by old, bitter, rich Tory MPs who had been in opposition for years to punish the working class and subject the unemployed and the disabled to performative cruelty. That Esther McVey, who hadn't even been in opposition and was new to the seat, embraced it so fully is as baffling as it is disgraceful. You'd have thought she'd have been full of optimism rather than right-wing bile, which is a Tory after all. The sheer incompetence of the Conservative Party isn't a new thing though, and the implementation of universal credit was so inept and ineffectual that by 2018 it was running 6 years behind schedule and bringing newly discovered levels of poverty to whole swathes of society. Several large organisations became concerned, and a report was compiled in 2018 by the National Auditing Office and forwarded to Esther McVey, who was at the time Secretary of State for Work and Pensions. The report was extremely critical and said that the rollout of universal credit should be immediately paused until significant changes had been made and shortfalls addressed. Esther wasn't very keen on the report, as you would imagine, so she decided to just pretend it said something totally different than that. She somehow interpreted "stop right now" as "speed up straight away," and told the House of Commons that the report had advised her to speed up the rollout of universal credit. Again, you really do have to wonder if these people actually realise that stuff gets written down and can be seen by everybody, don't you? As this was clearly not what the report had said, Miss McVey was made to apologise to the House after the NAO stepped up to correct her. Nothing else happened though, obviously. I mean, she was just allowed to get away with lying to the House of Commons about the poverty of hundreds of thousands of people. Obviously. In November of 2023, Rishi Sunak was desperately shifting the deck chairs around on the titanic mess that is the Conservative Party in the vain hope that he might slightly improve their polling numbers. He didn't. It was a waste of time. But he did make Esther McVey Minister without portfolio, which, as we've noted before, basically means Secretary of State for fuck all. It allows the Prime Minister to have a member of the Cabinet who's a bit more independent and not tied to a particular department. The Tories do have some purpose in mind for Esther though, as they've suggested that she be viewed as the Tsar for anti-wokeism or the Minister for Common Sense. In fact, when asked about it upon arrival at her first cabinet meeting, she actually said, "It's nice to be back. Obviously, I've been brought in to retain some common sense," to the ITV reporter. She's going to combat wokeism, hey? If she could define exactly what it is she feels compelled to combat about wokeism, she'd be one of the first. Ask the right-wingiest of the daftest of all the people you know to define what wokeism is, and every single one of them will give you a different answer and then get into a huff that you dared ask. You see, they already know what it means. They know that being woke means being aware of racial and societal discrimination and injustice and wanting to actively move towards a world where everybody is equal, regardless of their skin colour, gender or sexuality. When you ask them why they are anti-woke, they have to explain why they think your life should be harder, with more inequality and more rules, a more divided society that doesn't change and just stagnates like it has been for the last 14 years. They don't want to admit that that's what they're standing for, and that's why they get in a huff when you ask them why they're anti-woke. Woke finder generally. They chose well when they chose a bitter, sour-faced trollop like the Right Honourable Esther McVey for that role, didn't they? For a start, it shames me to say that a woman who grew up in Liverpool has voted 5 times to restrict the power of unions. Though it should shame us all that she gets to vote on anything that affects the lives of normal people, I suppose. She consistently voted against same-sex marriage at every opportunity and has voted against measures to promote equality and rights for the LGBT community 5 times. Maybe she got bitch-slapped a few too many times by the likes of Rob Rinder and Stephen Fry when she was trying to have a career as a TV presenter and decided that she hates the gays. Maybe she had a crush on Lily Savage in the 90s. Who fucking knows what the likes of her? She's voted against laws to promote equality and human rights 8 times as well though, so it's not just those of us that ride through life on the big pink rainbow bus that she hates, obviously. This one says a lot about her though. She voted against charities being allowed to mention anything to do with any particular party or policy that they support or object to during any sort of election campaign 9 times. Why do you think she's made that special effort? I'd guess it's because she's already been caught out lying a few times about universal credit and food banks, and she didn't want companies like the Red Cross, or God forbid, Trussell Trust, to be able to mention that the poverty that they're campaigning to end has been a direct result of policies that herself and her dark master Ian Duncan Smith implemented. Oh, and of course, she's voted to make the poorest people in the country poorer 31 times by lowering all welfare benefits and voted against paying more benefits to seriously disabled people 8 times. I'd imagine it'd be more, but she got booted out for 2 years for being a horrible cow in her Wirral West constituency seat, and there were 4 times when she couldn't be asked to turn up despite being the Work and Pensions Secretary. Fuck's sake. If you ever come to Liverpool and you're the type of proper dickhead that reads right-wing tabloids, you might find that a lot of newsagents won't have any copies of The Sun. It's not because they've sold out, and if you're in one of those kinds of shops, I'd recommend against asking the guy behind the counter if there's any in the back. There isn't. They don't stock The Sun because of the sheer level of disrespect and dishonesty that The Sun displayed in the way they reported on the Hillsborough tragedy. Even after all these years, it's a tragedy that is still felt deeply by an older generation that remembers it personally, and by a younger generation that they raised to respect the memories of those that lost their lives. It took so long for any of them to see any justice, and that just rubs salt into the wounds, and it has done for many years. This is why it was considered universally shocking and disrespectful that in April of 2014, during a remembrance ceremony that she hadn't even bothered to attend at Anfield, Esther McVey tweeted a deceitful and derogatory attack on the local branch of the Wirral Labour Party. Obviously, the condemnation immediately rolled in, particularly from the 24,000 people in attendance, and she was forced to account for her actions. And believe it or not, this is where it gets worse. You'd think, as a child of Liverpool herself, that she'd realise how deeply grave an error she'd made, wouldn't you? She grew up in West Derby and she was a teenager when it happened, so even if she didn't personally give a shite, she must have known people that did. In response, she said, she takes some responsibility as it was sent from her account, but it was actually somebody else in her office. So basically, yeah, this is why it happened, but it wasn't really me. Though, sorry, I suppose, for the thing that I didn't really do. Yeah, you fucking lying bitch. Get in the bin. Well, thank you for watching if you've gotten this far. It still amazes me that you're prepared to sit there and listen to my objections to various Tory twats framed within a 7-section soliloquy. But this is the 10th one now. I'm not sure if we should celebrate that or not, but don't worry, there's plenty left. The Tories have an inexhaustible supply of bastards. Let me know what you think of Esther McVey in the comments below. I think she's vile. Thank you very much to all the new patrons and members. And if you had a giggle with me and you want to support the channel, there are links below to PayPal and the Buy Me a Coffee page in the description box. The join button's below as well, and as always, it's greatly appreciated. Really though, the best thing you can do is subscribe and hit the like button if you haven't already, and share the video to your other social media sites. I don't mind your mates or your mum seeing my ugly chops ranting about the Tories on Facebook or Twitter. If it makes just 1 or 2 people realise that they'd be crazy to ever vote Conservative again, then we've all done our bit for our countdown to power. Is there something I can do for you? What are you doing? You've just come to hang out with your dad? Okay.